This movie legit looked like something that came straight out of the 70s. I kid you not. Please excuse the new setup, you guys. I'm at my brother's house. I got a new mic. I got a webcam specifically to use here, like my travel gear. I've got OBS on this travel laptop of mine. It looks like sometimes it's glitching, so please bear with me if that happens. Hopefully, I'll be able to successfully record this review without having to do it multiple times. So today I went to go see The First Omen. I really wanted to see it last week before I left to come here, but I just did not have time for a double feature the night before when I had to get up super early. The first thing that I noticed, and I had heard this mentioned, was that it felt like something that was filmed in the 80s, much like The Holdovers did. In fact, it reminded me of that. The style was the same. The way the camera moved, the cinematography, the way that they used to capture shots in the 70s, even the audio, the way the audio was captured, and the grain, the texture. It reminded me very, very much of a movie from the 70s. If you saw it and didn't know when this film actually came out, you would really be convinced that this was a film from back in the day. This movie is a prequel to the original Omen, which I think came out in 1976. It stars Gregory, Peck, and oh my gosh, I forgot the other girl's name, Lee or something. And it's basically about this couple who ends up finding out that they are raising the Antichrist, basically. So this prequel movie tells the story of how he came to be. It clocks in at about 2 hours. I didn't stay to the very end of the credits. I don't think there's a post-credit scene. There's really no need. One of the main things I really liked about this, besides the feel of this movie, was the main actor's performance. Nell Tiger or something. She's got an unusual name. She was excellent in here. Everyone in here was really, really good. Her performance was just superb. I was really drawn in by her character and this journey she goes on to figure out what's going on at this convent or wherever it is she is in Italy. A lot of it reminded me of Immaculate. It's a similar sort of story in that, it's a convent or nuns and the church and everything and some shenanigans going on. But The First Omen is more supernatural oriented, whereas Immaculate, not so much. So that's really where the similarities end. I enjoyed both movies. It's kind of hard to decide which one I probably had a better time with, but honestly, if I really had to pick, I would say that probably The First Omen wins out just because it's got that feel. It's got that 70s vibe, that 70s horror Omen franchise vibe, and I really liked that a lot. It was funny because the lady that sat close to me in the row, I swear to goodness, you would have thought she'd never seen a horror movie in her entire life. There are quite a few jump scares in here, and every single time she visibly and audibly reacted as if she had no idea this was a thing with horror movies. I feel like the jump scares kind of taper off a bit-ish towards the end, but they're still pretty prevalent. It's been a few years since I've seen the original Omen, so I don't recall how often there were jump scares in that movie. There are some callbacks to that first movie. There are at least 2 scenes specifically that pretty much directly mirror some events of that original movie. You'll know them when you see them if you've seen the original. Some scenes in particular that I appreciated was there is a moment where the main character is at a bar, nightclub. This is before she's supposed to get serious about taking the veil, they call it, or taking her vows or something. And her roommate, who's also a fellow up-and-coming nun or whatever, she decides, or she convinces the main character that, we're going to be giving all this up forever. Let's enjoy ourselves while we can. They go out to a nightclub, and the actor, or the character, the main character, she agrees to it, but she feels very self-conscious. She does not feel like she belongs because her childhood and how sheltered she was from things and things that were troubling to her as she was growing up. And there's this one particular moment where she's getting ready to join someone on the dance floor, and you can just see the uncomfortableness of her. Like it just oozes out of her. And there is a part of me that identifies so much with her, because that environment, that's not my type of environment as well. Like I would just outright refuse to go personally, because it's just not my thing. It's never really been my thing. And so the way she played that part, I was just like, I totally identify with you. I know how you're feeling. It was just funny. I thought it was, that was just a moment that stood out to me. There are a couple of things which I guess could be considered cons for this movie. One was that there's sort of a reveal that happens at the end, and it really ended up being not that much of a shocker, just because of some hints that were kind of being thrown your way and red herring stuff that was going on. So when the reveal happened, it didn't surprise me at all. There were some things that occurred as the climax is happening, the final moments and everything. There were some things that were a little bit of a surprise, but once the showdown is taking place, I mean, I know where it's going to go. I basically know what the general outcome is going to be, but there was something that happened with the character, the main character at the end, that went in a direction I didn't necessarily anticipate. I'm keeping it vague for those who haven't seen it. I'm not really sure how I feel about that, to be honest. I mean, on one hand, it subverted my expectation, which I kind of like, because I felt like I could predict where it was going and it went in a different direction. But at the same time, I'm not sure how well that serves the story. And to be honest, given the things that happened leading up to this point, there really is no way that this character could have ended up in this particular situation at the very, very end. So that was kind of a little aggravating. There's also moments where a person suffers a grievous injury too. Actually, one's not necessarily an injury, it's a thing that happens. Then immediately after that, they suffer an injury. And these two things combined would make it so that the actions of that particular character right after just could not happen. Speaking as someone who has been through one of those experiences before, there is just no way in the world. In those moments, it was asking me to suspend my disbelief a bit too much, and I was finding it hard to do. I can't necessarily say that it was something that ruined the overall experience, but it did diminish it a little bit, because I just kind of couldn't separate my logic from what was happening, even though, yes, I know we're talking about a supernatural type horror film, but whatever. And that kind of ties into some other stuff that I was mentioning about events that take place and how it feels like it doesn't really match with the overall story. Something I completely forgot to mention when I was filming the video review was that there was a scene that happened in the movie towards the end involving a character, and I didn't write it down, but boy, it really stuck out to me. This particular character is undergoing some physical things that are happening, and in all honesty, that scene, it felt so drawn out and so exaggerated and so overly dramatic. Now, I know that what was happening was indeed pretty intense, but it really felt like that particular scene went on quite a bit longer than it needed to the point that I was getting a bit impatient and annoyed. That's minor in comparison to the overall sentiment about this film, but it was something that I wanted to mention. Okay, back to the video. But other than that, in general, I enjoyed this film. I personally think that fans of the first, or the original Omen, will probably be pretty pleased with this. I did not get the sense that they were trying to drastically change the tone of the overall storyline, just giving us a picture of events leading up to that original storyline. It could flow pretty seamlessly from this movie to The Omen, 1976. And so I was satisfied with it as a whole, despite some of the things that detracted a little bit. I enjoyed it. I didn't feel like it was a waste of my time, and I would recommend it to fans of horror, and especially if you're fans of The Omen. There was a very interesting discussion that Film Threat has on their channel. They had it, well, as of the recording of this, it would be yesterday, April 8th, because this is the 9th. And it was a versus episode, and the panel on there, they were discussing this movie and also Immaculate, and just talking about this whole sort of genre of horror, you know, nunsploitation, they were calling it, religious horror. And it was a really fascinating discussion. So if you're interested in just listening to more talk about this sort of thing, go check them out. I'll try to remember to link it in the description. Avoid it if you care about spoilers, because they do touch on some things. I think that's all I have to say about this film. I hope that the recording went okay and there weren't too many glitches. I do apologize again, like I said, but this is the best I can do for this situation. I've got a couple more movies that I would like to go see while I'm out of town. My brother and I are going to try to attend an early access screening of the Ungentlemanly Warfare. And then I would like to go see Civil War at some point as well. Not exactly sure when. So anyway, whenever I do, I will be filming some more reviews in this setting. Please bear with me. Okay, that's it for now, you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.